It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by ANZ Home Loans for financial well-beings.
Hey, welcome back to the Real Estate Breakfast, your daily pulse on the Australian property market. Are you having breakfast and having a listen right now? Of course, we're covering areas like from Port Macquarie to Melbourne, and we're talking to the sharpest minds in real estate to cut through the noise. Tell you what, where has the week gone? Up to another Friday. And if you are inspecting properties this weekend, crunching the numbers or searching for that right opportunity, happy hunting, because buyers right now have got the upper hand. And it is the 21st of August. The month is starting to run away. September is going to be here along with spring. And good morning to Tim in Perth. You took the time out to email us. You say that you wanted to put a roadblock in front of everyone's mind. And you say that there is all this surprise at the moment about the market with prices going down. You say, what did people expect? It's hardly a surprise. The property market has been overpriced for many, many years. Did people think that this was indefinitely going to keep on tracking upwards? Tim says that real estate people say buy now, there is never a better time. The property market, however, is coming down. Buyers should wait. Tim says that I'm in no rush here in Perth, and I've advised a couple of friends to just have patience. I listen to you guys every morning. Keep up the great information. Tim in Perth, thank you for taking the time to email us. Do you agree with Tim or disagree? You know the email, we would love to hear from you. Let's go to Adelaide right now. We're catching up with Emma Slape. Haven't caught up with Emma for a while. She is the CEO from Turner Real Estate there. And Emma, what did you think of Tim's comments there in that email?
Well, I think Tim's right. We've certainly seen an extraordinary property market over the last 10 years, and in the last 5 in particular, we've seen really, really strong growth. So there does have to be sort of a equilibrium as things go through, and I think Tim's hit the nail on the head saying that certainly the time has come for the property market to cool. But whether it's going to drop a fair bit, I think is worthy of having a discussion about today.
Yeah, and just on that note, since we are in Adelaide, Adelaide's auction market, that remains down, but there are signs, this is the caveat I guess, there are good signs that buyers are coming back into the auction rooms. Let's just have a look at last weekend, because Domain's latest figures on auctions in Adelaide shows a 42% clearance rate with 96 auctions scheduled and 72 reported. For context, last year in Adelaide they had a clearance rate of around 71%. The key thing there is some more people coming back into those auction rooms.
Yeah, we've definitely seen a change in the auction market as well as overall market conditions. I think something that's really important to note with auctions, though, is in recent times with interest rates rising, banks changing their lending criteria, that not everybody can buy at auction. So that's also changing the number of properties that agents put up to auction and how people make offers. In Adelaide, where we're only seeing sort of 100 auctions a weekend compared to the eastern states, is a very small part of the market. And I think it's always wise to look at wider figures to get a better representation on what's really happening in the Adelaide market.
Yes, just staying with those auctions, because they are attracting multiple registered bidders. And in all of that, obviously, buyers have got more leverage at the moment. So it's probably hardly surprising that there are more of these registered bidders.
Yeah, we're definitely seeing that buyers are feeling the power shift to them, probably for the first time in 10 years. But we're also seeing that sellers are pretty sticky on their price, and we're not getting massive drops in what they've listed the property for and what they're selling. In fact, the differential there is only 3.6% in the last figures.
Yes, and interesting that Cotality's latest housing chart pack, we've talked about this, it puts Adelaide in a rather different position to Melbourne, which at the moment is definitely softer. Even if values fell substantially from their peak, Adelaide would retain much of the growth accumulated during its recent boom. That does matter, Emma, because the city has already enjoyed several years of strong price growth.
That's right. We've only seen a 0.1% change upwards over the last 3 months in house prices, but we've still experienced just over 10% growth in the last 12 months. That's quite different to a lot of other capital cities that have had some negative growth over the last 5 years, including quite recently. But Perth and Adelaide have bucked that trend and have not had any negative growth for over 5 years. They have stabilised, but we're not seeing prices drop.
And what about listings to sale price, especially when you sort of dial back the clock maybe 12 months ago?
Yeah, what we're seeing is that the price that people put their property up for sale and what they're contracting at is around a differential of 3.6%. So again, we're not seeing those massive drops of 10, 15%. It's fairly modest at 3.6%. People are fairly steady on their price when they're thinking about what they're going to sell for. They're putting in a range and they're sticking to that pretty tightly in Adelaide.
All right, we are talking to Emma. She is in Adelaide, and we've got more after this.
Listen to expert perspectives with exclusive real estate conversations and supercharge your knowledge base with us.
With fewer buyers competing and investor activity easing, could this be the window that many people have been waiting for?
Well, I've been in real estate now for 26 years, and every time there's a window of opportunity, everybody predominantly sits on their hands and doesn't take advantage of it. So yes, there's a window of opportunity, but it's a little bit more complex than that. And it's what everyone complains about when prices are rising. They just want a break. They want prices to fall, but when prices fall, they go, oh, I don't want to buy now. I want to wait.
Human nature in all of this is let's just wait a little bit longer. And that is what you're talking about. That is the hardest probably piece in a softer market to educate people on.
Particularly with first home buyers, because, in Australia, a lot are taking advantage of the 5% deposit scheme. That means that the needle doesn't have to move far for them to go into negative equity. So they're sort of thinking, well, God, if I buy with only a 5% deposit plus paying costs, I could end up with owing the bank more money than the property's worth.
Every morning from 6 a.m, we bring you the latest real estate news with diverse perspectives from leading industry experts. We deliver the most property podcasts across Australia every week.
Now, since we are talking about the way that the market has changed, if you want a glimpse of where Australia's property market could head to, New Zealand is worth watching because their boom was bigger, their correction far harsher, with prices falling almost 30% in real terms. Canada also followed a similar path. Australia has been different though, largely because our rate rises were less aggressive and population growth kept housing shortages intact. But now the market is turning, and with investors retreating, the question is whether those old advantages can keep protecting Australian property values. Well, as far as Tim is concerned in Perth, who I mentioned earlier, clearly he doesn't think so. Don't forget, we'd love to hear your opinion. You can email us, myrealestatepodcast@gmail.com, or use the voice message service that is below in the show notes. You just click it and start talking. It is a Real Estate Friday. We are in Adelaide talking to Emma. Emma, we better talk about these first home buyers and some of your observations in the market at the moment.
Yeah, the latest data is showing that around 30% of the buyers in Adelaide are first home buyers, and that's certainly hit a fairly record high for recent times. There's been a lot of moves by the government to encourage first home buyers, both from their ability to access savings as well as also building new properties, and they seem to be working. So hopefully that trend continues, because we certainly love seeing people build their future and build their wealth by starting in property.
Of course, we've got all of these home starters, these home schemes that a lot of first home buyers have been able to get into over the last 12 months. Off the back of that, we've got the likes of Tim saying, well, it's a buyer's market. Let's just hold off here before we start buying any properties. He is certainly thinking that the prices are going to come down. The other interesting thing, which has kind of been percolating with first home buyers, is the amount of equity, because they're getting in, on the 5%, sometimes even less than that. If things start to go backwards, it doesn't take that much of a movement before you're into negative equity. I think a lot of first home buyers are sort of switched on to this, and there's some cautiousness around that.
Property is a long-term investment, and it always has been. So just like the share market can change substantially day to day, if you look at the long-term trends, it's seen as a very solid investment. So if people are buying for security and they're buying for the long term, property will always do them well in that market.
Okay, let's have a look at the rental market. What are some of your observations at the moment there in Adelaide?
We're still finding that the rental market in Adelaide is pretty tight, but there's different sectors of the market. So if you're looking for something under $550 a week, we're seeing very, very strong and competitive demand. When we start to get over $900 a week, which, let's face it, is a lot of money for a family or people to pay per week, we're definitely finding that properties are sitting on the market for a bit longer, and also sometimes owners are having to adjust their expectations. So yeah, it's quite interesting to see the stark difference at the different price points, because 2 years ago we were finding that every price point was hot.
Now, we mentioned that you're the CEO there. You've got a reasonable team. Just recently I was talking about the fact that often we forget about real estate people, because real estate people are going through the changes, particularly new real estate people. They might have only been in the industry for 12 months. We're seeing some of those real estate people drop off and go into other careers. How is your team there in Adelaide? Are you managing to retain everybody and keep them all sort of pumped up and focused?
In any market change, in any industry, we certainly see that people consider whether this is the career for them, and real estate is no different. We've seen quite a lot of offices, particularly the smaller ones, wind up their business over the last couple of years due to the market changing in sales, due to the introduction of anti-money laundering compliance. So within our team, we're definitely finding that it's harder for salespeople. They're having to work a lot harder in their prospecting. And for those that have been in it for a long time, they know that it is a season. I definitely think we'll see a contraction of around 10% of the workforce, particularly in sales, drop out in South Australia.
All right, we'll leave it there, Emma. Good stuff. Thank you for that update for the Adelaide property market, and enjoy your Friday and the upcoming weekend.
Thanks for having me.
Whether you're a seasoned investor or a first-time buyer, know your property with us on the Real Estate Podcast.
Going into these war-torn countries years ago, which was, let's face it, extremely dangerous work, and then suddenly in the UAE, bombs are dropping from Iran.
Craig, it's a biggest surprise to me that I would have thought that being a war correspondent and being a real estate broker in Dubai, suddenly those talents would somehow, run in parallel and complement one another, because, I actually had missiles and drones exploding overhead when I was in Dubai, and I thought, gosh, I thought I got away from all this.
Everybody that knows you has probably been calling you for a reaction.
Yeah, my mother first, telling me to get out of there. But actually, I think Dubai, like many people, has been very safe in the sense that they've been able to intercept, 90, 95%. Even one is enough to disrupt the market, cause anxiety, and it's something that cannot go on.
We connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.